monetization, currently Vice President at Rajshri Entertainment. Inderpal is heading content partnership across digital and traditional platform. Is reasonable, responsible to drive revenues from content produced and acquired by Rajshri, and also heads business development. He specializes in domestic and international content distribution and is a regular participant at various international content markets, including MIPCOM, MIPTV, NATPE, ATF, DISCOP, etc. With deep understanding of digital content space, Inderpal has a track record of scaling up the content, alliances, and licensing to new heights. He has completed his MBA with specialization in marketing from Mumbai University. Welcome, Mr. Jaggi.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Urvi, for the introduction. I'll just, so the aim of today's presentation was just to give a gist of what exactly, is the traditional content distribution versus the new media / digital distribution that is happening these days. So I'll just, go through a small presentation, and if there's anyone who has any questions, I'm happy to answer them in between.
Sorry, also people can drop in their questions in the chat box so that, we can take it up as and when we can.
Okay. So my first slide, we've always heard this phrase that content is king, content is king. So it's basically, obviously content is king, but what is very, very important is the distribution. So, I've read this quote somewhere, and I think it's very, very apt for the content business. Is if content is king, the distribution is King Kong. So what does basically mean? What does basically content distribution mean? The distribution, any distribution, be it content distribution or be it product distribution, the aim of any distribution channel is to make sure that it reaches its audience at the right time, right? If you have good product, if you have a good content, if it doesn't reaches its audiences at a given particular time, it is of no value. Hence, it's very, very important for a product to have a very good distribution mechanism. Similarly, in content distribution's case, it means that the right content is reaching the right audience at the right time. So, for example, if we take a film, if the film is produced, it's a very good film. And if it doesn't reaches a right audience at the right time, it just kills the whole movie that has been produced. So, which is why it's very, very important for the content to reach the right audiences at the right time. Now, we'll just quickly run through what is the traditional distribution and what is digital distribution, because there's a lot of there's a lot of interesting evolving that has happened in last couple of years, because we've always been a very specific to traditional distribution, but now since the advent of OTT and a lot of these apps that have come, there's a lot of uptake of the digital distribution as well. So I've just basically broadly breaking it down into two headings. One is new media or digital, whatever you want to call it, new media distribution, and the second is more traditional distribution. So, what is new media distribution? New media distribution is primarily a lot of content today is being consumed on digital platforms, right? Now, these could be various OTT apps, OTTs, over-the-top apps. A lot of us as an audiences are consuming a lot of content on, apps like YouTube, Netflix, Amazon, Z5, Hotstar, Eros Now, tons of apps that are available. India as a market itself has more than 30 OTT apps, right? Each of them, catering to a very, very different kind of audiences. So, for example, Hotstar is very, very popular when it comes to sporting content. Amazon is known for a lot of newer Bollywood releases. Netflix is more popular for introducing a lot of international content. So we have seen an uptake, a lot of these new media or digital distribution apps that have happened in last couple of years. And there is a reason why this has happened. The reason why, because 2 years back, when the whole data democratization happened, when Jio launched in India, what it basically did is that it democratized the data, which was expensive, which was very, very expensive. a couple of years ago. It just completely brought it down to an extent where you know, anyone can have access to any piece of content because the data became so cheap. I mean, I remember there was a time when we used to pay almost $400 for 1 GB of data, and today you get 2 GB of data per day at a very, very nominal cost. So because of this, there is a massive uptick that has happened on digital platforms, and you see an outburst of social media apps like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat. So many apps that have come, and a lot of people are spending so much time on these apps. You see a lot of content that is being consumed on these digital distribution on these distribution mediums. There was one more called IPTV, which was Internet Protocol Television, that really didn't work in India because it was a closed uh, network kind of a situation that happened where people need, it was not open internet source, it was closed internet source, so it did not reach that audience as well. And when you come to traditional distribution, it's primarily your cinemas, your traditional satellite television, your DTH, that includes Tata Sky, that includes Dish Network. A lot of these are primarily traditional distribution networks where people are used to consuming these contents on a very regular basis. Newspaper again is a not very is a very, very traditional way of distributing text content, right? Which today, for example, at Times of India or a Rediff or your Daily Hunts, all of that content is now being consumed on new media or digital apps. There is one fundamental difference between digital distribution versus traditional distribution, and the concept of digital distribution is called VOD viewing. Now, VOD means video on demand. What that basically means that as an audience, I can watch any piece of content at any given point in time. So I don't need to tune in to 9 o'clock to watch a particular show on ZTV or on Star Plus. It's VOD. It's whenever I get time, I'm watching that content. So I mean, whenever I get time to watch, say, a show on Netflix or a show on Amazon, I can tune in as per my convenience. Whereas traditional distribution has always been appointment viewing. Now, what that means is that if I want to watch a particular show on Star Plus, I have to tune in at 9 o'clock. If Big Boss is being showed on Colors, I have to tune in at 10 o'clock to watch Big Boss. Whereas similar piece of content can be watched on Voot, that is Colors OTT app, at any given point in time. So there's a fundamental difference between digital distribution and traditional distribution, where traditional requires an appointment viewing. So if you want to watch a film in cinema, you have to go and buy a ticket and you watch a show at 9 o'clock or 6 o'clock or 3 o'clock whenever you have the time. Whereas the same movie can be watched whenever it comes on these OTT apps at per your leisure and as per your as per your convenience. So it's a lean forward versus lean back experience. So traditional distribution is always lean forward experience, where you actually engage with that, where you're actually being lean forward is with digital distribution, where you're actually engaging with that content, whether you're liking the content, whether you're subscribing to a channel, whether you're commenting it on. So it's more lean forward where you're engaging, whereas traditional distribution has always been lean back experience. So you just don't need to apply your mind. You can just switch on a linear TV and you can watch whenever you want to watch it. So that's a very, very basic understanding of digital distribution versus traditional distribution. Now let's see how big are these numbers, right? So what has been the uptake? So TV, as we all know, has been there for the longest, for a very, very long time, more than 20 years. But if you see as a country, there are only 200 million plus TV household in India, right? That speaks the volume, because in a lot of families there are multiple people watching one television. So there are 200 million television sets in India. There are more than 9,000 screens as far as cinemas are concerned. India is one of the most underserved market as far as cinemas are concerned. If you compare that, say, with China, China has more than 30,000 screens. Now, this is the reason why we've seen a lot of Indian movies perform better in China, because the distribution and the reach that these these countries offer is thrice than what we have as a country. So with a 1.3 billion population, we have only 9,000 screens, whereas countries like China has more than 30,000 screens, and they're adding more and more screens every year. So the numbers are growing for traditional media, but the numbers are not growing exponentially as you would be seeing on digital media. So digital media, if you come to the numbers, there are 500 million plus internet users, right? Now, I don't say mobile users, because mobile users are more than 700 or 800 million mobile users in India. Internet, when I say internet users, it means that people who have access to data, who can actually watch a video on their smartphone or on their feature phone. So it's a huge number, and this number has just phenomenally increased in last 2 years, like I said, because of it all thanks to Geo. So there's a lot of and it's only going to grow, because India is always a mobile first market. A lot of people don't have televisions at home, they have their mobile phones with them. So their first taste of watching a piece of content is more on mobile rather than on television. So television is more like a family view, whereas mobile is always a very, very personal viewing kind of an experience. This is exactly the reason why the mobile users are increasing by many folds. So there's a stark difference between traditional media and digital media. Like I said, traditional media is growing at a very steady growth, at a steady rate. It's not that it's not growing, but it is definitely not growing as much as the digital media or the mobile users are growing in India. Now, what are basically these digital distribution models? Who are what kind of apps are available? What kind of what kind of models are available? So it's very standard, very simple, three buckets in which the content is being basically, any viewer can watch the content. So first is transactional video on demand, which is also called as TVOD. Now, that what this basically means, and which are these platforms? So there are platforms like iTunes movies, iTunes Store, there are Google Play. So what this transactional means, that you can actually go and buy a film. So if you want to watch a film, you can go onto iTunes Store, and you can pay, say, for example, 200 rupees or 300 rupees, and they can actually see that film for a particular period of time, and then the movie will disappear from your phone or from your device. So it is as good as going and buying a ticket in a cinema and watching the film. So it's actually transactional, where you pay an amount and you watch that particular film. So, and like I said, there are platforms like iTunes, there are platforms like Google Play who offer these TVOD services. Unfortunately, TVOD as a model has not taken off in India, because people don't want to watch one film at a time. India is more of an AVOD, which is advertising video on demand service, and now slowly moving towards SVOD. So SVOD basically is subscription video on demand. So it basically means eat all you can kind of a model, where you pay, say, for example, 200 rupees a month for any of these services, like, say, for example, Netflix or Amazon Prime or Z5 or Hotstar or Eros Now, etc. Any of these services, where you pay a subscription fees for a specific period of time, for a month, and then you can consume as many content as possible. So that is subscription video on demand. And the last, which is the biggest for India, is actually advertising video on demand, which is AVOD. So the biggest platform in this case is YouTube. What does mean that as a country, we are more inclined towards watching content for free, rather than paying for content. But in last 2-3 years, this phenomenon has changed, where a lot of people are now willing to pay for content. So advertising video on demand, there is YouTube, then there is Facebook Watch. MX Player is one major platform that has launched recently, which is an advertising video on demand. So it basically means that a consumer watches that content for free, but the content is subsidized by advertisers. hence they can consume the content for free. So obviously there is no ads when it comes to subscription video on demand or transactional video on demand, because you're paying for content. But when it comes to advertising video on demand, if you're watching content and you're also seeing ads, so that is the basic bifurcation of the digital distribution models. Now, I also wanted to talk about this concept of cord cutting, which is actually very, very popular in the Western countries. And will this actually ever happen in India? So I'll just quickly tell you what exactly cord cutting means. So cord cutting is a very loosely used term for cutting your cable subscription, right? Now we need to understand that cable subscription is extremely expensive in the Western countries. For example, in the US, if you want to watch a cable television, the subscription goes anywhere between $20 to $30, depending on on which service, whether it is Comcast or whether it is whichever cable network that you have subscribed to. So cable subscription is very expensive in the Western countries. For example, US, UK, Canada, Australia. It's very expensive. This is exactly the reason why a lot of people are cutting the cord, which means that they are not subscribing to cable subscription, and they're actually moving towards OTT. Why? Because the OTT apps are much more cheaper. So if you look at Netflix, for example, in the US, their pricing it was earlier $10. I think now they have increased up to $12. So even at a $12 a month, they can watch so much of content. This is exactly the reason why a lot of people are not subscribing to the cable services in the US, whereas in India it is actually the most cheapest as far as cable subscription is concerned. So a typical this is prior to TRAI guidelines, when the whole reshuffling of cable distribution happened in India, where you are basically paying for a la carte and subscription services. In India, the cable subscription is one of the most cheapest in the world. So at 500 rupees a month, you can actually watch more than 300 to 400 channels at any given point in time, right? So there is no comparison to any other Western country. So to answer the question in a short, there's definitely no cord cutting happening in India. Yes, there is a lot of audiences that have moved from traditional TV viewing to digital TV viewing, but it's not that people are not subscribing to a television and only watching content on their phones or on their tablets. There is a small percentage people who are doing it, but India is a large market, so it doesn't really affect the broadcasters in any way. I also wanted to take up this point of traditional distribution versus digital distribution, which means OTT versus the multiplexes in a current scenario that we are living in due to coronavirus as a pandemic. So I'm sure a lot of you have been hearing a lot of movies have been moving from traditional theatrical release to a digital release. Now, why is it happening? Is it right? Is it wrong? Who is here to gain? Who is here to lose? It's a large topic, right? It's a complex one, and it has, like I said, it has no right answer. So I wanted to bring some light on this, where a lot of movies, and I have been someone who's been acquiring a lot of movies for last 10 years. So I understand there are smaller films that come to me for acquisition. There are bigger films that come to me for acquisition. Now, there are a lot of films which were primarily a small budget films, which do not have that kind of a bandwidth where it needs to have a theatrical release. So smaller movies going on to digital was writing on the wall. I mean, it was no denying the fact. A lot of people have said that we will produce movies directly for digital platforms. We want to produce movies which will directly go to digital platforms. In fact, a couple of months back, when Reliance Jio Fiber launched, it also basically said that they wanted to do a first day, first show kind of a model on the television, which is via fiber. And a lot of multiplexes were up in arms against them, because it obviously takes away from their core business. So there are, like I said, smaller movies have a lesser cost of production, and they have an even lesser marketing budget. Hence it makes complete sense for it to have them released digitally. I mean, I just picked up an example of this movie called Chintu Ka Birthday. It's a movie that has been promoted very heavily on digital platforms. It's a movie that has been premiered on Z5. Now, it's a very small film, but it's a very, very good film. It's a very content heavy film, which would not have got a lot of a very big release as far as theaters are concerned. Because when a family goes to watch a movie in theaters, they basically spend a lot of money. And today, watching movie in theaters is not a small thing. I mean, you almost spend 1,500 to 2,000 bucks to watch that film. And you wouldn't want to go and watch such a small film, which which you can actually watch in the comfort of your home, and on your television with your family. So it makes sense for a lot of these films to actually release in digital platforms, like I said, for example, Z5. I mean, you've seen Choked as a movie being released on Netflix. There are multiple films that are being released on smaller budget films that are being released on digital platforms. Now it all so like I said, this was just writing on the wall, and it was bound to happen. Now, what it also does for these smaller films, that it also gives them a much larger and a much bigger reach and audiences, rather than. So even if these movies were to release, say, in a theater, it would have not got more than 2,000, 3,000 screens, where it's just a blink of an eye. In next 2 days the movie would have just not been performed, and the theater owners would have removed the film. Whereas when these movies go onto digital platforms, and these digital platforms has a much larger and a much global presence, they're able to market these films, and that's hence they're able to get much more larger and wider audiences. Hence, I say that this trend of releasing these movies on digital platforms is like the dawn of a new era for Indian entertainment, because a lot of big producers like Dharma, like you said, you must have seen, directors like Shujit Sarkar. A lot of these bigger directors have been releasing their are releasing their films on digital platforms. So it's not supposed considered as a digital will not get a stepmotherly treatment anymore. And now, why are multiplex owners so upset about this? Because they are upset because there are bigger films that are going straight to digital. I mean, I've basically found jotted out some examples: Gulabo Sitabo, Lakshmi Bomb, Gunjan Saxena, etc. Are these all bigger films which are going straight to digital? I mean, had these smaller films being going on to multiplexes, doesn't really matter to the multiplex owners, but these big ticket films are going to straight to digital, which is what has really I the multiplex owners. Although the producer are also very, very smart in this decision by making sure that they're releasing smaller films which doesn't require that kind of an experience to release on digital platforms. So what I mean by that is that if you see that bigger films like 83 World Cup, or movies like Suryavansham, and a lot of these Radhe, Salman Khan's film, they are not going on to digital platform because they are much bigger films, and they require that kind of experience when it comes to watching that film in a theater. Because watching movies in theaters is primarily an experience. So you go and you pay for an experience rather than just to watch the film. Obviously the film has to be good, but it's the whole concept of watching that film that goes on to that you're going to watch that movies in the theater. So this is exactly the reason why the multiplex owners are upset. And like I said in the beginning, there's no right or wrong answer, but what this has helped is that it has opened up a huge market and a very big one for movies to go straight onto to digital. uh, and just to conclude the whole discussion, that who is going to survive in this in the long term? Is it going to be traditional platforms? Is it going to be digital distribution? Is it going to be new media? Who's going to survive? Who's not going to survive? What exactly is going to happen? So I think it's a very fair analysis, is that the both the mediums are here to stay, right? It's not, I wouldn't say that people will not go to watch movies in the theaters, or people will not will stop watching content on television. So the both are here to stay. But what has happened is that there is a huge uptake that has happened as far as digital content consumption is concerned, right? So digital has definitely cannibalized the audiences and the revenues for traditional mediums like TVs and cinemas. Now, what exactly it means, where a lot of people who used to earlier wait to watch content, movies to release in theaters, or movies to come onto to satellite channels, are now waiting to make sure that are waiting that the movies will come onto either of these OTT platforms at any given point in time, and then they will watch that content. So this is the reason why digital has cannibalized the revenues as far as the audiences when it comes to traditional media and traditional media. And like I said, that digital will not be considered as a poor cousin of TV or cinema, because earlier what used to happen is that a lot of content on digital platforms used to be really bad, where something that has not got is not getting a TV release, or something that is not getting a theatrical release, uh, that kind of content would be put up on digital platforms, right? But this whole situation of a lot of these bigger movies going onto digital straight, people are taking and especially bigger producers are taking a step back and taking a note that here is a platform which gives us massive reach. I mean, also, the platforms are willing to pay that kind of money for these kind of movies, and they it's the producers are not missing out on anything. So in a nutshell, traditional media and digital distribution both are here to stay. As I mentioned in one of my points, that traditional media is growing. It will definitely grow, but not at the rate at which digital media is growing, right? Exponentially it is growing, right? It's going from 2x to 4x to 6x to 8x, right? Whereas traditional media is going from 10% to 12% to 13%, etc. So they both are here to stay. No one is going anywhere. But as an audiences, we have changed our viewing patterns. So you will still see TV viewing more of a family viewing of an experience, whereas digital media or watching content on your phones or on your tablet becomes more of a personalized experience. So uh, I think this is what have put down my points as far as as far as this topic was concerned. And I hope I've been able to put out some points which made some sense. And if anyone has some questions or anything, I'm more than happy to answer that.
There are some questions in your chat, Inderpal.
Okay. What is the percentage of people moving to OTT from cable, and how cable industry will retain? So I think we've already seen a lot of partnership happening on that front. I think not more on the cable front, because cable as an industry, we are moving from cable to more digitized format. Uh, so there is a lot of investment that Reliance has done as far as two major cable networks are concerned. That is Den and Hathway. Both have been acquired. A majority stake that has been acquired by Reliance Jio. So we will be seeing that kind of an uptake where there will be amalgamation of of these services into cable into these cable services. As far as people moving to OTT percentage, I don't think so. There are a lot of people moving. As far as, like I said, it's not that the cord cutting concept. So I wouldn't say people are moving away, but there has been a massive increase of watching content onto OTT platforms. as compared to watching it on traditional cable TV platforms. Which mediums can be a great app for brand launch? I think YouTube as a platform has done some phenomenal work when it comes to doing brand integration is concerned, right? So today you see a lot of content that is being that you see, be it TVFs of the world or filter copies of the world, who are creating some really good content, but they're also, because obviously you can't be surviving completely on the basis of advertising revenue from YouTube, so they're also moving towards branded content. Uh, so I think YouTube as a platform can be a great platform for brand launch and for brand integration. Isn't there a loss of substantial revenues for the producers per se if only OTT option realize? I see. Okay, so so like I said that it's not the question of loss. Like I said, the producers are taking this on a case-to-case basis, uh, rather than using as a one-size-fits-all approach. So what I mean by that is that, like I said, that bigger movies like 83 and Surya Vancham and Radhe, the platforms are the producers are holding on to them and not releasing it on OTT. But whereas there are smaller budget films which needs to be released, they are going ahead and releasing that. So there is not a substantial loss as far as revenues are concerned, because we also need to understand um, that if, suppose, for example, say a Gulabo Sitabo or any of these movies that are coming onto OTT, if they were not to release today, what will happen once the lockdown is over and once the cinemas are opening up? There is going to be a huge backlog of films which are basically going to which will require a theatrical release. So obviously those movies will also become old. Now when I mean by that is that a lot of people would lose interest, and if a movie is delayed for 6 months, you can see the film that is being, it's not a new film. So as a producer, they also have to run their business, so they don't want to lose out. So they want to encash onto the revenues that are coming for them right now, rather than waiting for a theatrical release and making and expect that it will do X number of crores more. So I don't think so there will be a loss, but yes, it is definitely on a case to case basis and not a one size fits all approach. What is the decision making process when a movie like Extraction, which had a massive reach on Netflix, if it was released? A movie like Extraction is actually a Netflix. It's a Netflix original. So there is platform like Netflix and Amazon are paying a lot of money to these producers. So uh, see, we also need to understand that releasing movies in cinema is an expensive proposition, right? We as a producer, they have to it needs to it requires a substantial amount of cost when it comes to digitization, when it comes to delivery. So there is a lot of cost that is involved. But as far as movies like Extraction and all that, I think I don't think so. It is cannibalizing the revenues in any manner. I think movies like Extraction is giving a massive reach. So if the Hollywood studio was to launch it in the US, it would have been only restricted to a certain number of territories. But since they are they are trying to reach out to new markets as well. Uh, this is what exactly they are cashing on. They want to and platforms want more and more people to come onto to their platform, subscribe to their platform. This is exactly the reason why big ticket films like Extraction and Six Underground, etc., are releasing on Netflix. Yeah. So does the latest? I think the question was that if it is changing the equation between multiplex owners, distribution partners, and producers. The answer is definitely yes, because, like I mentioned, that all the major multiplex chains, be it Inox, be it PVR, they all have been not taking this very in a very healthy manner, uh, because of the reason that their core business is going to get affected. But I think it's only a matter of time where they all will come together and have a consensus in terms of in terms of find out a way which is suitable for both the producers, because neither the producers want to lose the money, nor by holding onto their film and not releasing it in theaters. uh, and similarly, the OTT, the multiplex owners don't want the revenues to go if the producers are making all the movies on OTT platforms. So I think eventually, when things get better, there will be a fine equilibrium between the producers and the multiplex owners. Oh, so I think it's a very good question, that the kind of subscription revenues are not matching, as far as the investments are concerned. I think these guys are investing. The platforms are investing so heavily because of the a huge market that India offers, right? So I think it's right now everyone is just burning the cash. They want more and more audiences coming onto their platforms, and we've seen that happening in the US, where the subscription revenues will go up in next year or so, which will eventually make sure that their revenues are matching up. But yeah, I think it's a very valid question, that the investments versus the revenues are not matching right now. I don't think so. The platforms are even looking at that. They right now, the only aim is to capture market share.
I think. Okay.
Yeah, I think they're quite a few.
Yeah. I think somebody wanted to say, I suppose, Subhradeep, I think, raised his hand or something.
Okay. Will there be any?
Yeah, Subhradeep, you can actually unmute and you can put your question. I think you already put in his question. Guys, any more questions?
Okay, so Subhadeep's question is, how does the creator producer
Yeah,
job?
1 second. He's back. Once.
Yeah, I see his question.
Hello, can you hear me? Hi.
Yes, yes.
Hi, Inderpal. So
Hi.
what I wanted to ask is, for example, a box office number, will the OTT probably provide the producers with the same amount of numbers in terms of money as a box office would? So a smaller film could go on to make, say, around 70 crores, 100 crores on the box office. Would an OTT pay that much money for putting out their content exclusively on their platform?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that is exactly the reason why producers are going, because the OTTs platforms are not in the game where they used to pay pittance, because like I mentioned in one of the points, that digital, and I think it's there in front of you, where digital was always considered as a poorer cousin, or not a very not a go-to platform for any producer. So definitely, to answer your question, yes, the OTT platforms are paying that kind of monies, and to producers. This is exactly the reason why the producers are going down this route, because there is no way, as a producer, who would not be who would actually let go of their theatrical revenue and release the films on digital. So they definitely are paying those kind of numbers, as far as these movies are concerned.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. I think two last questions. Uh, will there be any effect on revenues generated from ads? There is definitely a massive drop when it comes to advertising revenues due to this COVID situation, because what has happened in last 3 months is that the producers, the advertisers are not spending any money. The consumers are not spending any money to buy the buying capacity. Everyone is on that mode where everyone is holding on to their money. So there is a massive drop as far as advertising revenues are concerned due to the current COVID situation, and it is going to be there for next couple of quarters because there's a massive there has been a very big growth as far as consumption of content is concerned on digital platforms, but there has been an invariable drop in the revenues because, like I said, the advertisers are just not spending the money. Okay, so
So
currently there
even
are only
though,
these two sources: subscription and advertising are these only two sources of revenue for the OTT platforms.
so even
Unless
though after in the COVID time also, the lot of other platforms also used OTT platforms for advertising. Even though that the revenue is actually streamed out. That's what you
so,
mean.
Suresh, what has happened is that a lot of money has come onto digital platform. A lot of money has moved from TV to digital, but as the overall sentiment of the market is bad right now. So, and we've seen this specifically on platforms like YouTube. You see on television, there has been a massive drop as far as the ad rates are concerned. Because, like I said, today, why would a brand promote? Because if people are today are not going out and buying their product, they would not advertise it. Advertise it as it is as simple as that. So, although there has been a massive uptick of content, there has been a major drop as far as as far as revenues are concerned.
Superb. I think we have addressed, or you have addressed all the questions, I suppose. Any more questions, guys? So, any more questions? You can connect us. We will connect
Yeah.
you to
So the last
Inderpal.
question, I think
Saurav. So, yes.
yes. So Surav, sorry. I think we still have a long way to go. Netflix and Amazon are these two major platforms which are there, and I think they're definitely going to be there, for a long time. I think the only homegrown Indian platform that is there, that is Hotstar, is going to give them a big run for their money. But I think what is going to happen interestingly is that there's going to be a lot of niche platforms where people would actually subscribe to for a specific requirement. Now, for example, there's a platform called Mubi, MUBI, which is very specific to independent festival centric films. So someone who has interest in festival films will actually subscribe to Mubi. So I think it's going to be by far these 4 or 5 platforms which are going to be there. There's Netflix, there's Amazon, there is Hotstar, there is Z5, where are going to be there. They're definitely. I don't think so. They are going to surpass. So it basically comes down to who has deeper pockets to survive. I think it's all going to boil down to that. So to answer the question, whosoever has more and more money to burn, they're going to survive this.
That's very interesting. Any more questions, guys? We can take about one more question. I think we are done.
Okay.
Any more questions? Then you can connect us, and we can always connect with Mr. Inderpal. And thank you so much, Inderpal. I would request everyone to just switch on their camera so I can just take one picture. And Inderpal, you can actually stop sharing the screen. Then I can take a proper picture, please. I'll also share today's link. So, yeah,
It's shared.
can you please share in the chat? One second.
I've done that.
So we would be sharing the link today in the chat. We will share with you. Just leave your feedback on the link. Just click on it. Then you'll have a feedback session. 1 second.
Sure.
Urvi. Yeah, that's good. Cool. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you, Inderpal, for your time. It's a great session. A lot of inputs, a lot of new learnings for us. And we will look forward to have you once more to have some more topics on this.
Thank you so much.
The link is right in the chat box. Please leave your message or feedback or whatever you want to even ask Mr. Jaggi also.
Yeah,
Thank you.
please.
Perfect. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
I had a wonderful time. Thank you for this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.